What is up everyone, welcome back to Lexalexus. After this video, it will be the end of 2021, an unbelievable year for the channel and an unbelievable year for football. Before I move on to my score predictions, I just want to thank you guys for the support and the progression of this channel throughout all of 2021. It's been a difficult year compared to other years, but I want to thank you guys for sticking with me and for putting me in on the cusp of something even better. And hopefully 2022 will beat some records for this channel and we'll achieve all of our goals. Now, for the Football Prediction League standings, they'll be posted on the community tab a little bit later on. But if you guys like what you see, please do give the video a like. It does tremendously help the channel. Please do hit the subscribe button if you've not done so. It does really help the channel. And please share this channel, more importantly, to as many people as you can. That is the ultimate way that we're going to grow together as a community. But without any further ado, let's start predicting the 10 games that are still going ahead as it stands for this weekend. So the first game to predict is Sheffield United going up against Middlesbrough. It is the return to Sheffield for Chris Wilder, and I think this is going to be a really good game to watch because both of these teams are on the uprise of their form. Both teams will be aiming to get into the top 6. Sheffield United probably were haunted by expectation, and I think the players that they had didn't really quite live up to those expectations. Since Bonner's come in, I think he's put the pressure off the Sheffield United side a little bit, and I think that has allowed them to start progressing, and I think that naturally has made them improve their form. They're now unbeaten in their last 5 games and have managed to win 4 games in a row, which has put them wildly competitive in this top 6 race. You know, they are only 7 points away from the top 6, but have 3 games in hand, which is really good for Sheffield United. With Middlesbrough, since Chris Wilder's come in, they've only lost 1 game, and I've been really impressed about the system he's playing. I do expect McGoldrick and Burnley to return to the squad after contesting for COVID-19, so they could not feature against Fulham, but despite that, they still got a good result. With Middlesbrough squad, I'd expect them to have a very similar squad to the one that they had when they beat Blackpool in midweek. It was a very clutch win in the end. They took the lead for a lot of the game. Blackpool equalised late on with their substitute Shane Lavery, but Duncan Watmore 2 minutes later in the 93rd minute clawed the win, and with that grit it could give Middlesbrough the edge. I think I cannot edge them. I'm going to play it safe and go for a 1-1 draw, but I won't be surprised if any of the 2 teams are actually going to get a win. And FIFA 22 is saying a 0-0 draw. We were just speaking of Blackpool because they now have to play against Hull also tomorrow on the Saturday. Now, Blackpool's form has deteriorated. They've lost 5 out of their last 6 games, although they have managed to get a win in those 6 games as well when they beat Peterborough by 3-1, which is good to try and separate them from the relegation battle. But when you look at their form and the teams that they played against, it's a bit disappointing. I mean, Blackpool fans, I think at the start of the season would take the position that they're in. They've got 30 points already at the halfway stage. I think this form is just a brief spell of them, you know, showing a little bit of concern, you know, potentially being a little bit too complacent about their position. With Hull, they're not as safe as Blackpool are at the moment. They do have a couple more games in hand over Blackpool though, and their form has deteriorated just a tiny bit, but it hasn't deteriorated drastically. For Blackpool, I expect Gabriel to go back to the squad after serving his suspension. It could be a 4-4-2 system that Neil Critchley will go to. I think he prefers that way of playing. Grant McCann will be trying to make sure that Hull can soar up the table a little bit. At the moment, if I'm going to back a team, I don't know, to be honest. And because I've got this uncertainty on both of the teams, I think they'll cancel each other out. I'm going to predict a 1-1 draw between these 2 teams. FIFA 22 has predicted a 2-1 Blackpool win. We now have Bristol City going up against Millwall. Now, both of these teams have played in their midweek games, both with disappointing results. Bristol City lost 2-1 to QPR at a game where they did have the potential, they did take the lead, but a very bad habit of Bristol City is leading but then throwing that lead away. They've lost one of the most points from winning positions out of most of the teams in the championship, and they do got to address that. Now Millwall, they have steadily been a little bit a team under the radar. They've not played in too many game weeks because they had a big COVID outbreak. They play a Coventry side who've also been affected by the pandemic and obviously COVID. So both of the scores were substantially a little bit weaker. Millwall, especially their bench, was filled with a lot of scraps, a lot of youth players. But despite that, Millwall did get a result. The only goal coming from Tom Bradshaw in that game. And I think against Bristol City, where Millwall do have a very strong record, they can't have Andy King, Bristol City as well, since he did get a red card against QPR in their last game. I have a feeling Millwall might be the team that might edge this there. Bristol City are just proving to be a bit of an inconsistent side to predict. Millwall's also a tough team to predict, don't get me wrong, but I think Millwall might be okay with this one. As a prediction, I think I'll go for a 2-1 away victory to Millwall. FIFA 22 is going for a 3-1 away victory to Millwall. Next up, we've got Birmingham going up against QPR. I really want to see a response from Birmingham. They've not played in a couple of game weeks, of course. They've had a couple of their matches postponed, but their last game was a 4-0 defeat to Blackburn Rovers, where they were pretty much second best for all departments in that game. They played QPR side where they did have a little bit of concern. They lost back-to-back games, and in fact it was 2 games in a row where they've not scored a goal as well, where one of their strengths was QPR managing to score all of their goals. But they did respond very, very well, picking up a win against Bristol City. That grit could definitely take QPR over the edge. And I think the frustrating thing with QPR, just sometimes I think they could be a little bit slow with their build-up. They always like to be the dominant team. And Birmingham could definitely relish and sit back a little bit. What I will say with Birmingham, I don't want to be conclusive that they're just a team that sits back. Their football, I think, has improved compared to last season for what I saw under Aitor Karanka. But I think this year, the results are not quite going at a rate that I think Birmingham fans were hoping for. So, as a prediction, based on the performances, Birmingham obviously having a bit more of a break than QPR have had, I still have the feeling that I think QPR will have that extra bit of sharpness, which I think will be given the edge. I'm going to go for a 2-1 away victory to QPR. FIFA 22 is going for a 1-0 away win to QPR. Next game is Blackburn going up against Huddersfield Town. What have I not said about Blackburn but give them praise? They have defined the odds this season, managing to get into third place position. They're joint on points with Fulham, and following that Fulham cannot play their game against Swansea this weekend, at least a point will put them in the automatic promotion places for the first time this season, and actually the first time ever since they actually got relegated from the Premier League, which is an unbelievable achievement. For nearly 10 years, Blackburn have not really been close to be going back at this level. This is the first sort of season I've been seeing Blackburn have this opportunity. They play a Huddersfield side which you definitely can't underestimate either. Despite losing 8 games, they are in the top 6 themselves, and all the games that have gone ahead, they've capitalised and they managed to get some good amount of points through that. Now, Huddersfield definitely got a bigger injury list than what Blackburn have got. Sarr will be out, Vallejo, Tom Lees, Hogg, Danny Ward's going to be out, Campbell I think is gone as well. So the squad's going to be difficult. I think they're going to have to put Rhodes as their number 1 striker and potentially have Thomas and Karoma as the wide players. That in itself is good, but it doesn't leave them a load of options to be desired on the bench. Blackburn have got a majority of their players available, with only Bradley Dack and Ian Paveda being the 2 players that are not going to be available. As a prediction, I do see Blackburn continuing their form. I know Huddersfield can definitely shock people. They did get a great away win against a great Forest side, big in form, but I think Blackburn might edge this. I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to Blackburn Rovers. FIFA 22 is going for a 1-0 Huddersfield win. Next up is West Brom going up against Cardiff. Both teams, I would say, are very frustrated on their positions at the moment of this season. West Brom had a really devastating loss recently against Derby County. Derby, who had the lowest XG out of all 24 Championship clubs, still found a way to beat them at Pride Park. And this sorts of results have just been happening way too often with West Brom, where they've dominated teams, but they've just not been taking their chances. But I will say they've been a bit unlucky with COVID. Alex Moa and Carlin Grant have tested positive for COVID, and they will not be available for this game either. So potentially we're going to have to see some young players go through. The likes of Gardner Hickam is going to have to probably be featured. Fellows as a striker is probably going to have to be featured again as well. Cardiff, don't really have too many absentees. Only Leonardo Bacuna, who did get a red card against Bournemouth, a very clear one as well. And they really did capitulate, keeping it a really close, tight game. But as soon as they really had that numerical disadvantage, they really were vulnerable. And I think that will be a concern for Cardiff when they play another tough team like West Brom. Now, as a prediction, this is such a tough one to predict. I could see West Brom potentially edging it if some of their key players take the chance. And I think that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for a 1-0 West Brom win. I don't see this one being a high-scoring game. FIFA 22 is predicted a 0-0. Honestly, not a bad shout. Next up, we've got Nottingham Forest going up against Barnsley. So Nottingham Forest have been on an uprise of form very, very recently, but they have suffered back-to-back defeats for the first time since Steve Cooper had arrived at Nottingham Forest. They do have a player Barnsley team, which I think they will be feeling a little bit nervous of their position off the table at the moment. They still are on 14 points. They still have a good realistic chance of surviving. However, they've only amassed 2 wins all season. I mean, that is atrocious. It really is atrocious. If Derby had not had their 21 points deduction, you would definitely go as far to say that Barnsley have been the worst team in the league. And I think a big problem of that has been their youth players. It's a very young squad. I just also think they've just not been coached in the right way to get the best out of them. With that being a problem, I don't think the transfers have been that great either. Barnsley have not even got Heelick in the squad. He did pick up an injury against Blackburn, where they did make it a pretty close game, but I think Forest might be able to have the edge despite some of the absentees as they got. So as a score prediction, I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Nottingham Forest. FIFA's gone for a 1-0 Barnsley win, which will be a huge result for Barnsley. Next up is Reading going up against Derby. Now this for me could potentially be one of the biggest games of the season. Reading find themselves just outside of the bottom 3 in 21st place at the moment with 21 points. Now, they face a Derby side, which you would argue have kind of rejuvenated their season a little bit. They've won 3 games on the bounce, and if they carry this going, they will have a really strong chance of overtaking Barnsley soon. Because a win against Reading, and of course Barnsley do not beat Nottingham Forest, then Derby will be within 1 point of Barnsley with a minus 21 point deduction. You know, Derby have got grit, and Reading is exactly the target that Derby are going for, because they are setting the target, and if they beat Reading, that target is going to get less and less. So the motivation for Derby to win this game is absolutely massive. Now, of course, Reading could be a bit refreshed for the fact they've had a long break. Obviously, a lot of their players did have COVID, but sharpness might not be on their side either. So as a prediction, who knows, to be honest. Reading could easily get a win because Reading has been a rather unpredictable team. But based on how well Derby have been so far, I might have to back them. So as a prediction, I'm going to go for a 2-0 away victory to Derby. Why not? I never backed Derby for a win, and I'll back Derby to go over the line this one again. Now, FIFA 22 is predicting a 1-0 win to Reading. Next up is Stoke going up against Preston. Now, Stoke did lose very recently to Derby County. Now, I think the biggest issue what Stoke had is that they did have a lot of mistakes leading to goals. Sam Clucas made a very crucial mistake which led to Derby's winning goal. And if you're going to have players in that midfield pivot position who are going to make very silly mistakes like that, you are going to have a really, really big problem. And potentially the system that Michael O'Neill's gone for, he's not tweaked it as much. He's not thought about the players he's got. Obviously, he's been unlucky with injuries. Sawyers, Powell, Sutar, 3 long-term injuries that are 3 important key players and actually starting players as well in that squad as well. Now, we've not really got much to say about Preston at the moment because we've only seen them play once under Ryan Lowe, which was their 2-1 win over Barnsley. Since then, they've had to wait because all their games have been postponed and they did have COVID problems. Now, this is their first away game, and I think this is going to be Ryan Lowe's toughest challenge yet as manager. If McCann and Whiteman can work well together and can be very robust and win the midfield battle, then they may have a chance. As a prediction, though, is also a very tricky one. I don't really see many people edging this. I think the safest bet is a 1-1 draw, and I'm going to go with that. FIFA 22 is going for a 2-1 Stoke City win. Last game to predict is Bournemouth against Peterborough. It is first going up against 22nd. Now, Peterborough did pick up a good result against Bournemouth last time. It was a 0-0 draw, so they may have a little bit of hope if they want to try and get something in, but they're playing against top of the table Bournemouth, where they did beat Cardiff by 3-0 and did look back at their best with that result. And for Bournemouth to have that grit and to be able to bounce back in, you know, really tough runs of forms and situations. It just goes to show how good of a team they are. Now, I'm very worried about Peterborough, and the reason is that their away form is simply atrocious. I think it's the worst away form in the whole EFL. 11 defeats out of 12, and only 1 win in those 12 away games. They're also 2 points off safety as well, so they do need to pick up a win, especially if Reading do pick up a result against Derby. This is a big opportunity for Reading as well to see if they can increase their gap from the bottom 3. Peterborough really do need a result because it will put some pressure on Reading. But I really do not see it. I really don't. You know, 11 of their 14 defeats, as I said, came from away games. So it's been their away games, and their defence really has been their kryptonite. And I think Bournemouth would definitely relish this game. So as a prediction, I'm going to go for a 4-1 victory, I guess. It really could be any scoreline, but FIFA 22 is predicting a 2-0 away win to Peterborough, which will be an unbelievable result if that does happen in real life. Well guys, that is going to wrap it up for my score predictions today. If you guys want to see my Premier League predictions, I'm going to leave my predictions in the comments down below. But that will wrap it up for today's video, guys. Do make sure you comment your score predictions in the comments down below so you guys can have a chance to be on the Lexalexus Football Prediction League. That will wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys liked the video, please do give the video a like. It does tremendously help the channel. Let's aim for 15 likes in this video. That'll be appreciative. Please do hit the red subscribe button if you've not done so. We're trying to get to 900 subscribers as soon as we can. We are starting to get there, so let's see if we can really try and make it a target by 2022. And please share this video to as many people as you can. All of that really helps. But that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys in the new year. Take care.